Hello, welcome to a special NASCAR preview for the Shriners Children 500 at Phoenix International Raceway. NASCAR weekend preview right here on the Grid Network. Subscribe, hit the bell icon. I'm Joe Sandiego, and with me we have Jackson Todd from 36xracing.com and Tanner Smith from the Pit Box Press. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Con, Michelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. Link in the video description to invest in the Grid Network, help us get to the racetrack. And of course, YouTube Super Chat, buy me a coffee, welcome. Well, thank you on the air. We'll be following the chat room. And of course, encourage everyone to share your questions, opinions with us on the air. Let's get started with Phoenix. A lot to look forward to. Of course, this is going to be the championship race many months down the road. But we're back for the springtime race. And one of the big things for Joe Gibbs Racing, Joe Gibbs has to feel pretty good, but at the same time, his drivers are all over the place when it comes to storylines. Let's start with the front of the pack. Christopher Bell going for 3 wins in a row. If he does that, he'll be the first driver in the NextGen era to do that. That is still mind-boggling for me. And let's be honest, he was a contender at the Daytona 500 until Cole Custer got him towards the tail end of the race. He won here last spring, so it's very likely he could do this. You got his teammate, Denny Hamlin. He is not exactly in a that good 2 days, being dragged in the news with the lawsuit with 2311, and now NASCAR countersuing them. That came out yesterday early in the morning. Chase Briscoe, they go out there and they win their appeal yesterday. So they get reinstated. They're back from the low 30s in the points up to playoff range. At the bottom, Ty Gibbs, and I found this hard to believe. It wasn't until I believe it was on Encore I found out. Ben and Matthew were there talking about it. Ty Gibbs, 36 in the points. Last finish in the top 10 was at Kansas. And the last 8 races, out of the last 9 races, 8 times finished a 30th or worse. Just staggering. Tanner, in what order do you see Joe Gibbs drivers finishing from the highest to the lowest?
I want to point something out first. So I first met Jackson at that very Kansas race that Ty Gibbs got his last top 10 in. And that was almost 6 months ago. So it's not great. Granted, we had a whole off season in between, but I did find that quite interesting. Anyhow, as for the 4 JGR drivers and where I think they'll finish from lowest to highest, I'm not going to give like a place specific breakdown of where I think each of them will finish, but I'm just going to ride the momentum and say that Gibbs is going to finish last amongst those 4. Hopefully it's not a repeat of last fall where he made it 1 lap around the track and then bottomed out going out through the dog leg and then took a really hard right side impact to the wall and ended his day prematurely. He had a great run there last spring. You would have thought that he'd carry a lot of speed into that weekend in the fall, but it just didn't translate that way. So I would expect him to have at least a bit better performance, considering the past 3 weeks have not exactly gone his way. Right behind that, I would still put Briscoe in at 3rd amongst those 4. I still don't think the team is quite gelled yet to make speed without having a weird part on their car, make their car go faster. So I'm going to just say that they're probably going to be the 3rd car. After that, I would definitely lean towards Hamlin having a pretty solid day like last spring where he led laps, I believe won the first stage, but he just kind of got caught up in a couple of mistakes and wasn't able to really bounce back by the finish. And then I'm not going to say Bell's going to win this weekend, but the tear that he and Adam Stevens have been on has been absolutely incredible to watch. That duo is just so strong at these kinds of tracks where, Gateway, New Hampshire, Phoenix, they all are about a mile in length and are relatively flat or have kind of weird banking that are mostly flat. And I just think it leans more into Bell's skill set to be good at Phoenix. And I mean, out of those four, who's running better right now?
Yeah, my order is not, it's not straying too much. I'm going to go Hamlin, Bell, Briscoe, and Gibbs. The one I'll talk about most here is Gibbs. That's from top to bottom. Gibbs at the bottom. He wrecked in the fall Phoenix race. He had a really poor showing at the Martinsville race. The Bristol race wasn't much better in the fall. Ty Gibbs is certainly in a slump. We're not in total crash out. He's a flop territory, but he certainly needs to find his groove again. Kind of hit a sophomore slump a little late, I guess, because he had a really, really good rookie season, and then he even started strong last year at the beginning of the year. I think about the Bristol, the tire Bristol race, where he was up in the front pack controlling the early stages of that, but ultimately didn't hold on at the end. Gibbs still under 100 starts. Talk about that all the time on here, so he still has time. But yeah, he just needs to find his flow again.
Now, Jackson, you bring up a point about Ty Gibbs. That sophomore slump, we anticipate that, and it seemed he started off really good. He's hitting that. I guess my question, a follow-up question, if he was to have another race, this race weekend, outside the top 30, and most of the time it seems to be beyond his control, Talladega, Daytona, Atlanta, the road courses, he got wrecked. Assuming he has just more bad luck, would there be any sense of urgency to make a change? Because that'll be now 9 out of 10, or since we are now just focused on this season, it's very early. It's just, we got to give him more time. Cause like you said, he's still well below 100 starts, and that team has a potential, it appears.
Yeah. At the end of the day, his name is not just on the nameplate of the windshield, right? It's Ty Gibbs, right? He's driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. So if Austin Dillon is still putting around in that 3 car, I think Ty Gibbs is going to be all right in the 54. So yes, there'll be some pressure on him, but I think it's the pressure's pretty low. There's not. The stakes are low. It would take some pretty catastrophic results, I think, to get Ty Gibbs ejected from that seat. I'm sure he's feeling some pressure to not just be there because of his name. But yeah, I wouldn't expect any move anytime soon. Also, I just want to think of we still haven't gotten to a mile and a half yet, right? We're gonna get to our homestead in Las Vegas here in a few weeks. So and those late playoff, the streak that we talk about, it's extending into the playoffs last year. First of all, JJR is going to prioritize the cars that are still running in the playoffs, but also just generally the field, just as the playoff drivers are going to run at the front, and he's not getting tied up, in their messes or anything. And JJR maybe wasn't, giving him the number one stuff back at the end of the year when Bell was trying to advance, so on. So anyway, yeah, I'm not too worried about Ty Gibbs.
Yeah, I'm not really yet either. It's still way too early in the season to really sound the alarm bells when 1 of 26 gets you a golden ticket to the playoffs. Not only that, it needs to be considered that Ty Gibbs came into the season with a crew chief that has never done that at the Cup level. And granted, his crew chief has done some work in the Xfinity program, but that's still a completely different platform from the NextGen car. And with all that in mind, not everybody can be Charles Denike, who can come in and, help Bubba Wallace get a top 2 spot at COTA on the front row for the start of the race. So I just think that Ty Gibbs is going to have an abundance of time to develop in this series. We've seen it with Austin Dillon as well, Kyle Petty before them, that eventually they're going to get enough seat time that they're going to be the driver that they're going to be at the Cup level. And at the end of the day, I still have a whole lot of faith that Ty Gibbs is going to, contend for championships one of these days in the Cup Series. It's just that the further and further we get from his first win, it does start to concern you that he's going to be putt-putting in Pop-Pop's car like Austin Dillon. Now, granted, I still think that Austin Dillon's Xfinity Championship season in 2013 is a stark departure from Ty Gibbs's because Austin Dillon did not win a race, and I believe Ty Gibbs won 6. So, yeah, I'm not going to sound the alarm bells yet, but if this continues into his 100th start, which is, I believe, at Charlotte for the 600, that's really when we need to start pointing fingers, asking questions, things of that nature, because at that point, half the regular season's gone and the playoffs are closer than they've been all season and are starting to really shrink in terms of races. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned. And, obviously you still have Chris Gabehart trying to get his feet under him with being comp director. And clearly that's working out for Adam Stevens and Christopher Bell, but it's not quite translated for all 4 other cars yet.
Coca-Cola 600, we've seen plenty of first-time winners. I'm starting to think I'll keep my eye on Ty Gibbs that race weekend. In the chat room, Denver, what's the deal with the option tires? Can the Cup drivers start with them as a super aggressive tactic? The start, if so, I would like to see the back marker used to throw the leaders off by doing so. Great question. I know we'll be talking a little bit about the option tires. I don't recall any rules saying they can't start on the prime or the option tires for the Phoenix race, and I'm trying to remember the best I can with Richmond. I don't think anybody started on the option tire, so it'll be interesting to try to see how that all shapes up with the option tire.
I mean, if you were the leader, hypothetically, if you got the pole and you started the race with your option tire, 60 laps, that's a fuel run at Phoenix. You'll be able to make it to the end on gas, maybe not tires, but I mean, if you wanted to put down as many cars a lap down as you could, that would be a valid method. I just don't think I would do it personally.
That could be a great strategy, especially if we see the race go caution free. The only thing, if a caution comes out, I think then you might be okay. Get the alternates and then save them for later on the race. It'll be really interesting to see what's going to happen with the strategy this weekend with the option tires. Something else that's going to be very interesting, you may have seen on the entry list, Catherine Legg. She's going to be making her Cup Series debut. And this is the 3rd driver in 2025 to make their Cup Series debut. Halo Castroneves, of course, at Daytona 500, finished 39th, but he was ahead of 2 cars because we still had 41 entries in the Daytona 500. Connor Zillage, very anticipated, finished 37th out of 37. That hard crash with Dan Suarez knocked him out, and we did not see that many cars go out until after he did. Catherine right now, she is going to be in equipment that is not exactly winning contention. BJ McLeod in the Live Fast Racing Group, that team rarely are there in the top 20. When they are, it's usually Daytona, Talladega. You could throw in there Atlanta since they're repaved, and it's mainly keeping their nose clean. Others get in trouble. They find their way towards the front. But there's been times where BJ's been able to work his way towards the front because it's just that big pack drafting effect. Jackson, what would a good result for Catherine be at Phoenix? And could she finish in a way ahead of Castroneves and Zillage, and at least finish ahead of more cars compared to what they had accomplished?
Well, considering they both essentially finished last, I hope that she outperforms what they did. A top 30 would be fantastic. I think this is just kind of like a little just trial run in a stock car for just to kind of just see what happens. Just go run some laps. So yeah, I mean that's the only goal for the weekend, right? Just like go learn what NASCAR racing feels like, get some seat time, and then who knows from there. I would expect that if anything was going to pursue beyond this, it would look like some a patch of like Xfinity races for some like mid-tier Xfinity team would probably be like the realistic next steps. But yeah, just learning weekend. Go see what this is all about.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, something that interested me about Kyle Larson's comments coming out of the Indy 500 last year were that the NextGen car races a lot like a slower, heavier Indy car. And I think that, with that said, Catherine's IndyCar skills might translate a little bit better to the NextGen car than they would have the Gen 6 or an Xfinity car. That said, the 78 car's performance is not exactly the greatest. I looked it up, and BJ McLeod's best finish in the 78 car at Phoenix was 27th, and that was before the next gen was even brought into the fold. So a top 30 would be great and unprecedented in that car, but we have seen a number of races at Phoenix end in attrition. Last year, we had that major pileup at the beginning of the third stage that took out Corey LaJoie, John Hunter Nemechek, Joey Logano, etc. So I don't think a top 30 is out of the question, but honestly, as long as she stays out of trouble and keeps the car clean and, gets a lot of good research and gets her grounding in the stock car down, then that's a successful weekend in my book.
Completing the laps, getting the job done. Follow-up question for you, Tanner, and then Jackson. Lead lap, yes or no? I lean towards potentially no. I think we could see 23 or less cars on the lead lap, I think.
Yeah, I'm
would
not
say
too optimistic on her finishing on the lead lap, and that's not a slight to her. It's more, and it's not even a slight at the equipment. The equipment is just what it is, and I just don't see that team in such a competitive Cup field finishing on the lead lap when you have 36 drivers out there racing for points.
Yeah, I think my my answer to this one is probably not.
Makes sense. And then Denver, hopefully we don't see the pace car bring out the red flag. Of course, if anyone forgot, the pace car driver somehow almost missed the entrance of pit road, hit the barrels, and we had sand all over track and a red flag. That was a new one. I don't know if that's one of the parlay picks in DraftKings, but hopefully we don't see that.
Hey, they saw the best driver in the world do it the year before, so
it happens. And with Phoenix, this race, that race for the championship last was something else. And essentially since 2020, we've been coming here for those championship races, which many have been critical of. I think even with that comment, sort of one of the highlights was when that red flag came out, because racing does not seem to be the greatest at Phoenix when it comes to Homestead, which everyone compares to as a venue to host a championship round. And we know Phoenix has been repaved, it's been changed over the configuration. Now you don't have grass. And overall, I think this is just something where the option tire now is being introduced. NASCAR has said, if this works out great, it will be the primary tire in November, but it will not be an option tire. So the championship race will just, again, have one tire compound, the softer compound. Tanner, what do you make of this option tire, and how could it add value on track? I know you mentioned earlier about that aggressive strategy. Do you think it will have that same effect like we saw at Richmond?
Yes, I do. And let me first just start off by saying that many critics are just wrong about Phoenix Raceway. And the problem is how NBC and Fox both shoot the facility. And that's coming from somebody that has been to 9 Phoenix races in a row from 2019 through the end of 2023. So I watched a ton of racing there across all three series and ARCA. And I can personally tell you that Phoenix Raceway actually has everything that every NASCAR fan actually likes. It has multi-groove racing. It has low downforce and high horsepower comparatively. It has tire wear. It has strategy. It has everything that should make a great racetrack great, and yet people hate it. And I really just don't understand it. Now, that tire wear is going to be dialed up to 11 with that softer tire. And especially with any sand that gets swept on the track, whether it be from Rattlesnake Hill or from a pace car incident, we'll definitely see some enhanced tire wear with that softer tire. It's just a matter of how long it lasts compared to the primary tire. And I'm really, really hoping that we don't have any blowouts. At Richmond, I don't remember the option tire having any sort of failures that were highly publicized. So I'm pretty optimistic that the racing product will not only be enhanced here, but it will be like game breaking. People will finally see the Phoenix track that I've been seeing all these years. And I can just only hope that Fox will shoot it properly. But if last week is any indication of the broadcast that we're about to be tuning into this Sunday, my hopes are still a little short of hopeful.
Yeah, my broadcast hopes are not high. I mean, I don't know if this is really, I don't know if this is a hot take. I have no idea. I'm not a huge fan of these option tires and this little experiment we've been doing. I understand their purpose. I understand like the idea, but like to me, that's not NASCAR racing. Like we were sitting here last week talking about how we didn't even have a green flag pit stop through the first 2 weeks of the season. And then last week we just have like stage flipping pit strategy. So why are we trying to add elements to pit strategy when we don't even let the basic core function of NASCAR pit strategy like play out? And now we're like adding a thing on top of that. So that's, I don't know, that's just something that kind of like, I guess, frustrates me about like NASCAR and their approach to like strategies. It's like we've decided that like even though our basic strategy, like our broadcast partners maybe don't do the best, and it itself is not, the races don't play out in a way that is favorable to the pit strategy and tire strategy that does exist. One maybe more than the other broadcast struggles to convey strategy and those things to people. So why are we adding an extra element? I don't know. I'm not a fan of the NASCAR option tire experiments. I guess in a perfect world, maybe we are in that scenario, but the fact that we can't let normal oval strategy play out and tire saving play out, why do we need to do this thing with an extra tire? If we let normal oval strategy things play out, we might not end up in a situation where we're doing this option tire anyway. I am a neutral negative on the option tire. That's quite the monologue for neutral negative, but
I sort of wish we had a point where it was like, okay, if we didn't have the stage caution at certain tracks, especially the drafting tracks at Daytona, Talladega, the strategy, that would be so much fun. And then with this option tire, do we really need a stage break? Because 60 laps, okay, everyone's just going to run hard and then spread out the field, and you have a car that's super dominant. Especially if they do something aggressive, they're just going to lap a bunch of the cars. I do feel like sometimes they make these decisions to, make the racing more exciting. It's like you sort of, in a way, dilute the racing itself because everyone's boxing on a common strategy. In the chat room, Denver, I hear the 2024 Supercar champion Will Brown running a NASCAR Cup and Xfinity Series at Portland, Sonoma, Chicago, and yet to be determined oval. We'll definitely be following if that happens. Okay. I know there's been a lot of talk, especially after SVG. A lot of supercar drivers, people are looking at them. Hey, come over here, drive for me on the road course, see what you could do. I mean, even in Portland, we saw Ed Jordan, former IndyCar driver, top 3 finish position. A lot of potential there. So we'll see what happens. let's go do a lightning round. We haven't done this for a while. We encourage everyone in the chat room comment with your thoughts as well too, as we go through these 5 questions. Started off with Jackson. AJ Allmendinger is in his 450th start. Would he finish top 5, top 10, or top 20?
None of the above. I think it's going to be a finish in the 20s. Yeah.
I am also going with probably neither, but top 20 isn't out of the realm for him in the next gen car. He's done it 3 times.
I'm thinking top 20. Wow, we're just the speed that Cog Racing has is not there. Daniel Suarez, he has finished in the top 15 the last 3 races at Phoenix. Will that streak continue, Tanner?
Yes. I think so.
Yeah, he was kind of mid-pack. It was kind of mid-pack in the championship race. Had 2 struggles on short tracks before that at Martinsville and that Bristol playoff race. I think this is a no. Or wait. How was the question phrased? Does the streak continue? The streak continues. Yes, the streak continues. No, he will not get a top 15.
Wow. Shane Van Gisbergen leads Riley Hurst in the Rookie of the Year standings by 3 points. Jackson, will he continue to lead after Phoenix?
Yes, I think SVG will continue to lead in the Rookie of the Year points after Phoenix.
I disagree. Riley Herbst won the Xfinity Series race here in the fall, and I expect him to carry that data and performance into this weekend and get a top 15 while SVG probably finishes like 26th in a lap down.
Oh, man. A lap down, SVG.
We're being haters today.
I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm just saying, like it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough to compete.
Oh man,
I'd like to see him do well. It's just it's 3 points. I mean, that's what 3 positions probably on track. I mean, it's probably gonna be Herbst finishing ahead if I had to take a guess.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like you got to think about it like contextually. Like it's only a couple points.
If anything can happen, Cole Custer, speaking of anything that can happen, has failed to finish in the top 20 for every race this year. He's been outside the top 20 for every race. Tanner, will that streak continue? Will Cole Custer finish outside the top 20 again?
I'm going to have to go, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I do not foresee a Cole Custer top 20 this weekend. This is the hater special.
It is. Denver in the chat room. And Jackson has Austin, I feel compelled to your nickname, your Yahoo series, because you literally are spitting an image of him. I mean, I don't know what that exactly means.
All right. I don't know who that is, but I hope that's a good thing.
Let's continue on with the show. See if we get more hate for this. 2311 has been off to a fast start. But does the news of the counter lawsuit now become a distraction? And do we see a drop in performance from 2311? Jackson, what are your takes on that?
I don't. The 2311 has not been super great at getting like over that like final hill short tracks. That's kind of one of my things that I was looking forward to this season. It's going to be interesting to see here in the first kind of experiment of that. They've had some okay to good runs at short tracks, but they can't quite get over that hill, and they still don't have a win there. They've won, road courses, drafting, intermediates. They've done all, but they've not yet won on a short track. So I would not tie a lack in performance this week to the lawsuit necessarily. I mean, they haven't been distracted up to the point. They have, I do my playoff point rankings. That's how I look at the standings, and they're the only team that has multiple drivers in the top 5 of that. So I think 2311, they're doing great right now. It's going to be hard to get 2 cars to get a top 5 finish, especially at a track and track type that they struggle at. Tyler Reddick basically was a non-factor in the championship race in a fall. So no, the suit won't impact the weekend, but I don't think the weekend is going to be super hot necessarily either. Sorry, that was a lot for a lightning round, but this was the one I wanted to elaborate on.
I'll strike quickly. I disagree because Charles Denike's whole strength in Xfinity, or not Xfinity, but trucks last year with Christian Eckes was on the flat tracks. We saw him absolutely eviscerate the competition at Martinsville until people got fresher tires towards the end, and they still won the race. Not only that, 2311 did have Bubba Wallace finish very well last year at Martinsville. He was second in both stages and finished fourth. So I think it's more of a Tyler Reddick is not good at short tracks issue than it is the whole team is not good, because Bubba also finished third at Bristol in the fall. So it's not like they haven't had good results and good pace at those tracks. It's just their results haven't exactly stacked up. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. Bubba Wallace is going to be a player in Sunday's race and could have a chance to win. He has a proven record of being very solid at Phoenix, and hopefully it'll help bring Reddick along because he looked lost in action last fall. So, yeah, you also have Riley Herbst on the squad who, as I mentioned in a previous question, has success there. I expect that to somewhat translate.
Yeah, I'm really latching onto this lightning round that's no longer a lightning round, but I have I think this is a really interesting point that's been about Reddick versus Wallace here. I think it's been really interesting this weekend to see the Herbst performance versus Reddick and Wallace, because that might provide more insight on what you were just saying there. And I have this little formula I use heading into the weekend to kind of give myself little power rankings of what drivers to expect to do well or not. And on my list, Bubba Wallace is my number 9 driver heading into this weekend, and Tyler Reddick is down at 19th. So I definitely what you said is definitely true based on my little information here. But yeah, definitely interested to watch 2311 this weekend, no matter the result.
Oh, I don't think I actually answered the original question. The lawsuit is not affecting that team at all. They went to the front row last week. They're not bothered one bit.
Well, it was the last question of the lightning round. I figured this could be the one with more discussion, so all worked out. That said, one team that did not have at all lightning speed last race weekend at COTA, Team Penske. They were just nowhere. At one point, I saw you on Blue Sky, Jackson mentioned the highest running Ford was 16th. That was Ryan Blaney early on in stage 1. It gets worse for them. In the standings, of course, you no longer have Austin Cindric up there. Why? Well, he got a 50-point penalty yesterday for the right hook of Ty Dillon. Now, we remember that right hook. I remember some of us in our little group chat were talking about, was that a right hook? Was that hard racing because he got pushed off the track from Ty? NASCAR said, well, we're handing a penalty, but no suspension based on several factors, including speed. We weren't at a mile and a half over. There was no caution brought up. Ty Dillon managed to keep going. He did hit the wall, but it wasn't as a forceful impact like we've seen the other 2 drivers that got suspended. And this was on the road course, which, true, it's not a mile and a half. You don't have the safety barrier right there, but still, a little bit of grass, got into the wall. Essentially, his penalty is doubled what Carson Hocevar got for spinning Burton at Nashville under caution. That was 25 points, 25,000 here, 50,000, 50 points for Austin Cindric. Tanner, was this the right call or the wrong call with this penalty for Austin Cindric and essentially dropping him down the points down to the 30s?
I've been kind of racking my brain about this for most of the day since the news broke. Personally, I would have suspended him. I feel like this is the exact thing that most fans are extremely upset about, which is NASCAR not being consistent. We saw 2 drivers. Now, granted, these were at high-speed ovals in Charlotte and Las Vegas, but we saw them be consistent in 2 separate instances in 2022 and 2023, where drivers in intentionally took out a competitor via a right hook and put them into the wall. Now, since then, I would call the Hocevar incident an outlier because they were under caution, and frankly, I don't think that was the intent of what was happening there, but it looked bad, and therefore you have to penalize them somehow. You can't do that kind of stuff under caution. But if they had suspended Hocevar last year, I really wouldn't have had that much of a problem with it. That is a move in the right rear hook that should not be permissible in the NASCAR Cup Series or any division of stock car racing. It's something that they have outlawed at high speed ovals, but we saw Austin Cindric chase Ty Dillon across the track over 3 or 4 lanes, just like Bubba Wallace did to Kyle Larson at Las Vegas. And the same result pretty much happened in that a car ended up in the wall. It was a horrific look for Cindric, who had an exceptional start to this year and for the most part had cleaned up his image of being a rough and dirty driver in the Xfinity series at times. But it was extremely disappointing to see him resort to that, especially on lap 5 of the race? We have 95 laps left, dude. You can't be doing stuff like that. So for me personally, I totally would have suspended him. I think obviously a 50-point driver penalty and a massive fine is in effect suspending him for a race because it takes away, I think, 83% of your possible points output for a race if you win both stages and win the race. But I just leave this situation more puzzled and disappointed in the sport and its officiating, and I'm starting to lose faith that they actually know what their rules are.
I was going to bring up the 50 points essentially being a suspension of a race. I'm glad you mentioned that at the end. I think I'll start by saying I often find myself, I'll acknowledge the bias out of the gate. I often find myself with a bias in favor of the Penske cars and against the Dillon brothers, as may have been previously mentioned in this show. So I thought, I was like, okay, let's flip. I think we also just have to say, okay, Austin Cindric, playoff level driver versus Ty Dillon driving in that college car, not in a playoff level driver. I feel like even if you're not like a Penske fan, that can still skew maybe the view on the scenario a little bit. So I flipped it in my head. I was like, okay, if Ty Dillon right hooked Austin Cindric down the straightaway there, what's my take on that? And I think looking at it that way, I can agree with the points penalty. I have no take, more or less, whatever on the points thing. And I'm also fine with no suspension. I feel like the suspension line is crossed, it becomes more of a safety concern. A points penalty and a fine, to me, that is like a sporting problem. Like, you were not following our like sportsman code of conduct, and that is bad, and we're going to clean this up. Versus a suspension line, for me, that cross is more of a like, this could have been like horrifically bad if a few things went a different way, and that was irresponsible, and you should not be driving a car for a week. Austin Cindric, he tore up a race car, and that was bad, and he had a massive points penalty that's the equivalent of more than a race, and they're losing some cash. I think this is a fair penalty for what it was, and I understand that this is different. This is a different penalty compared to the intermediate mile and a half versus at a road course, but also these are different situations. That right hook, I find it hard to believe that whatever situation led to that bump and right hook on a road course, I don't think that would. I find it very hard to believe that Austin Cindric would have done the same thing if they were racing at a mile, because it's so different. This was a road course. The crime was different on a road course, so the punishment can also be different on a road course.
I don't know. For me, that runs the risk of copycats. And that's just not a move I want to see at any point at any racetrack. And frankly, I don't think the fans should want to see it either, because ultimately the intent of a right hook and what it ultimately delivers ends up being the same, which is a driver side impact into the wall, which we've seen has caused multiple injuries to a number of drivers throughout the years. And I really don't care what facility it is, whether it's Martinsville Coda, Charlotte, I don't care. That kind of stuff just doesn't have a place in the sport. And, you know, you've had a number of drivers speak out about it this week, notably Kyle Busch on Sirius XM. He said that this is something that he doesn't want to see at any level of the sport and at any kind of track. And he's kind of getting fed up with NASCAR kind of being all wishy-washy about it. And like, I feel like more drivers that, let's say if Austin Cindric was in the playoffs already and did that, the 50 points don't mean anything to him anymore. So he can just do that for free. And like I said, I just don't want to see this kind of move replicated. I want drivers to know that, like, there's a hard line on the right rear quarter panel of cars. And if you cross that line, there is a swift and definitive punishment. And them kind of totaling out different points for different, like, versions of the same infraction just seems silly. Make it outlawed and don't allow them to even have the option. And granted, there are some situations, like I believe Cindric got into Austin Dillon at Gateway a couple of years ago, which Kyle Busch did mention in that interview. And I do disagree with him about that incident. There was clearly no intent in that one, but there are certain situations where someone's going to clip someone's right rear by accident and cause an accident. Obviously, we don't want to see that either, but that can be explained away. But you swerving over several lanes of traffic to attack a guy like that, it lacks decorum, it lacks respect for your competitors, and he did it on the front straightaway in front of the massive, like the most massive amount of fans he could have done it in front of. Like, the whole thing just disgusts me. And that's coming from somebody that has, you know, carried the water for Austin Cindric at certain points in his career, even when he's been a bit over aggressive. So yeah, I'm really disappointed in him, but I'm more disappointed in NASCAR for refusing to have a backbone yet again. This whole penalizing guys X amount of points for what is essentially the same thing just seems stupid.
That makes me wonder. Here's a follow-up question for you, Tanner, starting with you.
Sure.
We know now NASCAR has this rule. If you get suspended and you get a playoff waiver, you forfeit the playoff points you've earned. We didn't have this rule when Chase Elliott got suspended for the Coca-Cola 600 incident. Do you think now this sort of weighs in on NASCAR? Like, well, we could suspend a driver, but at this early on the season, he's going to have Austin Cindric, if he's suspended, if he gets that waiver approved, he forfeits his playoff points, almost takes him out of the championship unless he wins every single race. Do you think that might be now something NASCAR's officials are considering when they're discussing these penalties?
You don't write rules to bite your nails over them later on. You write them so that way you have a set of operations to do once a situation arises. And NASCAR bites their nails way too much in these kinds of situations for me, to where it should just be simple. And I think that Austin Cindric probably should have had that particular rule in mind. So yeah, I really don't have a whole lot of sympathy for him or NASCAR in this situation. I just think that at the end of the day, you just need to outlaw this move. It's dangerous, and the more guys do it at certain tracks, they're going to start trying to do it at other places too. So just cut the snake off at its head and stop dealing with the BS that keeps falling out of it. Make it simple.
Yeah, we'll see about.
I mean, yeah, NASCAR officiating simple. That's not possible.
Look, I'm just advocating that they do simple.
No, I know. I don't know. I feel like I've kind of, I don't I don't know. I feel like you are getting into I definitely, yeah, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I don't have much to say on this. I'm really not, honestly, on my note, I said, I have no take here. That was my note for the Austin Cindric penalty. So I really don't have much more, to elaborate on, but, yeah, guess I don't.
It'll be interesting to see how everything falls. Of course, Austin Cindric teammate Logano, Blaney, they've both won here at Phoenix, but not in the spring recently. The fall time, the championship. Jackson, do you think potentially if we don't see Penske exactly running up towards the front, do you think they might be sort of more sacrificing a win to get notes for the fall race in Phoenix, assuming they're in the championship floor?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know, it's kind of dangerous to assume that like it worked, or that they actually learned something out of that. And I think they would probably not take too kindly to us just assuming that they sacrifice the spring weekend. But I think, I don't know. I have this like gut feeling. I don't know. I can't really place where it originates from, but I feel like the Penske cars are going to show up this weekend. And I think part of that for me is coming from how poorly the Fords performed at the road course. Like there had to be some, this is maybe like some hopeful optimism for their sake that some effort for the road courses got redirected to other places. Like, we have a short track heavy playoff, and they seem to perform well there. And honestly, even outside of the playoffs last year, like, I mean, I think about something like Ryan Blaney at the Iowa debut performing really well. So I'm curious. I mean, that's certainly a storyline heading into this weekend is what are the Penske's going to do, and can they convert a little that winning magic to the spring? Oh, also, I mean, like the option tire, which we kind of briefly talked about already, but that also is going to create a different situation that, like, who knows how they play that. This feels like a perfect scenario where like Paul Wolf pulls like some like level like CD strategy, like out of the pocketbook, and gets the 22 a win with this option tire. So that'll be a factor as well.
I mean, if you remember correctly, Logano was in position to win the option tire race at Richmond before turn 3 happened, and was running in the top 3 prior to the caution that brought out the final overtime there. But I'm going to be pretty short and sweet about this. Penske can afford to sacrifice this race, and the evidence is that they have the past 3 years and won in the championship every year. That said, I think that part of the reason they haven't performed as well is because of last year they came into 2024 with a new body, with the Dark Horse Mustang body. Then the 2 years before that, the 2022 and 2023 Ford were both kind of slow at places that weren't plate tracks. So I think that coming into this weekend, I think Ryan Blaney is going to come out and try to make a statement. And, last year's spring race could have played out a little bit differently had there been a caution in like the last 50 laps, but there was a bit of a strategy shakeup that like only the best cars in the field were able to really make it back up to the front. And that's obviously why Christopher Bell was able to drive from 20th to 1st to win. But like Jackson said, that option tire definitely provides a big wrinkle coming into this weekend. So we'll have to see, but my prediction is that Blaney is going to be up there and contending, and maybe Joey, but their performance last year in the spring does not leave me too confident that will be the case. Cindric, I have no idea. We'll have to see how he responds from this penalty and see if he comes out, guns blazing this week.
So, speaking about tires, let's talk about Kyle Larson. We all know what happened at COTA with his tire coming off. That means he's without Jackman, Brandon Johnson, and front tire changer Blaine Anderson. They are banned for 2 races. Used to be the crew chief was gone. Well, that rule has changed, so he still has Cliff Daniels on the pit box. But Kyle Larson, a rough COTA. Hendrick Motorsports, William Byron, of course, had the Daytona 500 win. He got second place at COTA. Alex Bowman has been quiet, and he's still working his way up there in the standings. Tanner, which Hendrick Motorsport driver do you think is going to finish ahead of out of the 4?
I think Alex Bowman and Chase Elliott are going to be the best 2 Chevys coming into this weekend. Alex Bowman, it's a home race for him, so he always wants to perform at Phoenix. And as for Elliott, he obviously won his first championship here and has demonstrated time and time again that he really knows how to get around Phoenix Raceway. So if I had to take a guess in order, it would be Bowman, Elliott, Larson, Byron. I don't know why. I just don't feel like William Byron was much of a factor in that option tire race. So I'm just going to assume that they're going to miscall it or something is going to go wrong at the 24 car.
I thought this was going to be an obvious answer, so I didn't really build a case. My plan was Kyle Larson here, which Tanner kind of just shot that down a little bit. So I don't really have a full case behind Larson. I didn't think I needed to back one up, but I was going to say Kyle Larson.
Kyle, he's won here before. We'll see what happens if he gets the win. Speaking about that, encourage everyone in the chat room tuning in. Comment right now. Pick a winner time. Matthew still leads, but Tanner, you're in 3rd place. And then Jackson got on the board last race weekend. So we got 11 folks on the leaderboard now. You can make it 12 or 13 by getting your name there. But we only have one race this weekend. NASCAR Cup Series at Arizona. Jackson, starting with you. Who is going to win the Shriners Children 500 at Phoenix Raceway?
All right. I already mentioned my Magic Power Rankings list, which had Kyle Larson at number 2, by the way. That's why I mentioned Larson. I thought it was more clear because my sheet said it was clear. But the number one driver on my special little Magic sheet, Tanner shouted out already, Ryan Blaney is my pick a winner for Phoenix.
Ah, dang! You took the Riz out of my prediction. Yeah, I mean, I'm also going with Ryan Blaney. He's just finished in the top 5 here way too many times to not finally get a win here. It's kind of like Martinsville, where I can't remember what it was. I think it was like 11 straight top 11 finishes or something like that before he finally broke through and won in the fall of 2023 and then backed it up the next year. I think that we're going to finally see Ryan Blaney claim that elusive victory at the Phoenix Spring Race, and it'll really set the tone for what he's going to be capable of for the rest of the year.
I'm not going to make it unanimous.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the driver that it will be a first in the next gen, 3 in a row. I think Christopher Bell will get it done. And then we'll be talking about, can he do what so few have done, 4 in a row the following week at Las Vegas. We'll see, but Christopher Bell will be my pick.
Wow, the fact that that's even like not
that
not
sets up
like
real nice for him.
Like he could like, yeah, like this it is possible, and that thought would not have crossed my mind until you just said that. But like, oh my god,
we'll see. He has to win Phoenix first before we can get to that point. But encourage everyone, comment with your pick of winners. Of course, we'll be across social media at Grid Network TV. Follow us on our website. And we're less than a month away from the Endurance Performance Index and the grid ranking coming back. And, of course, a big thank you to our Patreon investors, Conda Show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. So the weekend plan, Saturday, we done the roundtable for IndyCar. We did the roundtable for NASCAR. We're doing the roundtable for Formula One. Tanner will be hosting it. And we'll have our Formula One team right there. So encourage everyone, noon Eastern Saturday, tune in for that. And then we're going to be having our wrap-up show Sunday, approximately 90 minutes following the conclusion of the NASCAR race at Phoenix. And we'll do it all over again with Grid Encore, Grid Tonight. We'll be back next Thursday to preview Las Vegas. We'll see if we're on a hating mood or not next race weekend right here on the Grid Network. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. For Jackson and Tanner, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.